To get anything done, I need a tone and I need some sense of outline. And the outline is usually much easier to get than the tone. I don't have the heart to try to make an outline until I believe that there is a piece of writing to be done, and the piece of writing will exist as soon as I believe that there's a tone to write it in. A piece of writing is not interesting or worth doing if there's not some personal risk, if it's not dangerous in some fashion, whether you're exposing some part of yourself you'd rather not talk about, or whether you're trying to be sincere about something that would be much more comfortable to be ironic about, or vice versa, if you're being sarcastic or ironic about something that people take seriously. Most comic characters are unknowing. They can't be funny. I mean, bad, unfunny comic characters can, but genuinely comic characters don't know how funny they are. That is, then they would just be witty or something, or they'd be stitches. I think it has to do with my own taste for comic writing, which I think tends to track pretty closely with the presence of real literature, because that comedy of not knowing is so close to the tragedy of not knowing. Desert Island is not a literary canon. Desert Island is a wish list. What I wish I had had sustained reading time to actually figure out. So, and frankly, I don't see why one wouldn't take advantage of being on a desert island to learn a new language. So, like 3 really good books of Russian grammar and a Russian dictionary, and then War and Peace or something might be what I would take to a desert island. Just make good use of the time. That's a Midwestern thing, but I can't tell if it's a Midwestern thing always, or maybe just a Midwestern thing from my childhood. A wish to make good use of one's leisure time, not just piss it away. Try to read books that are not only fun, but have some substance to them. It feels like a Midwestern prejudice that I ought to be improving myself on the desert island. It's not enough that I'm on a desert island. Frankly, a desert island sounds kind of great.
The unseen interviewer has asked me whether I have any regrets or interesting experiences resulting from having portrayed real-life individuals in my books. And in answering that question from our invisible interviewer, I would begin by making a distinction between nonfiction and fiction. And obviously, well, the older of my 2 older brothers spoke of his inexpressible relief that I had left nonfiction behind me after I published The Discomfort Zone, which was a memoir of sorts. And he was just sort of tearing his hair. Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to write about real things? Why do you have to write about mom and dad and your family? His discomfort really with The Discomfort Zone was that it was nonfiction and that things were, embarrassing stuff was being aired. So yeah, I had a number of experiences like that with that particular book. Had a letter from the mother of a classmate of mine who was killed when I was in 5th grade. Lovely kid, lovely mother, very, very upset. Not by anything particular I said, but simply that I was talking about her long-lost son and making him part of my story. And there is, I think, especially in nonfiction, but even in fiction, if people recognize themselves or think they recognize themselves, which is a key distinction, there's a it turns out to be very, very important to people that they tell their story, and that people would almost rather be robbed of money than robbed of their right to their own experience. And it is the sorry truth about writers is that they do raid other people's experience. Journalists do it all the time. That's seduce and betray is what a journalist does. Unless you spent your life in a padded cell, if you try to write a memoir, you're going to talk about other people. You're drawing on the stuff, and if you have any sensitivity and any sympathy with other people, you're actually not just drawing kind of the superficial details that you can see, but you're incorporating, you're inventing a story of what was going on with them. And then in fiction, you're doing that all the more so. Fiction, I think, tends to be much safer ground, long-lived fiction, because even if you begin with raw material and end with a book in which people can sort of see little glimpses of themselves in diffracted ways, and sometimes in not so diffracted ways. Certainly my father had a lot of similarities with the main character of my last novel. In the process of getting to the page, you've made it your own. You've dreamed it yourself. The relation between a fictional character and a real character is very much akin to dream character to real life character. So when, if my mother is suddenly speaking French in a dream, if she could watch my dream, she'd say, oh my God, that's me, but it's not her. It's crucially not her. This woman is speaking French. My mother couldn't speak a word of French. And for the dreamer, it's this weird experience because it sort of is the mom, but it's not. It is something that has been created in the head of the person doing the dreaming, and that is what the fiction writer does. What I believe then and continue to believe is the unique capacity of the written word, particularly written narrative, to connect a solitary writer with a solitary reader. And the promise of that solitary reader alleviates and makes meaningful the solitude of the writer. And then conversely, I still subscribe to that, but the last nearly 20 years has made solitude, real solitude, a much harder commodity to come by. We have these gadgets which are designed to address that same anxiety of being alone, but in my opinion, don't actually assuage it. They just distract you from it. And there's some part of me, if I spend all day online, is even lonelier than when I started. Now I've got this kind of gnawing hunger. I want to hit the button again. I want to hit the button again. I want somebody to send me an email. I want somebody to send me another email. I want, and that kind of lever pressing is much more akin to a drug, to some sort of compulsive behavior than it is to the experience I have when reading Tolstoy. So I think writers, because they need solitude, are preserving some rather endangered concept in the very technological world we live in. And it is our job to create books that are compelling enough to pull a reader out of that crazy beeping world and into a quiet place to have a real experience for 20 hours. And if enough of us can keep doing that, we'll keep the thing going.